All right. Hey, everybody. I am Terry Chadbourne, and this is the ProtoSchool weekly call. So you'll notice in our notes for today's call that we have a bit of a different format, and we're going to start structuring this call based on the top level goals of the ProtoSchool project. So we'll hit each of these goals one at a time and just walk through anything exciting that people have been, or less than exciting, depending how you feel about it, that people have been doing in those areas. But before I forget, I just want to call out that Ipfs Camp is coming up. It's happening June 27th to 30th in Barcelona. And I will just, actually, let me share this real quick so people can see. Ipfs Camp is something that may be of interest to a lot of the ProtoSchool community. It's specifically about Ipfs, and I will just distinguish that from Filecoin. If you're super interested specifically in Filecoin and crypto, you won't, I think, find a lot of content there about it, but we're looking at all aspects of Ipfs, and it's a great opportunity to spend a few days with other folks who are really excited about that technology, both learning about it and kind of shaping the direction of the project. So there'll be some workshops and hacking sessions. There will be a bunch of new content, in some of it in ProtoSchool format, some of it not, at that event. So registration is open now, and you can see applications close on April 26th. And do note that this isn't a buy your ticket process. This is an apply, explain your interest in the project, so that the selection committee has a chance to get to know you and see what you're interested in and make sure that you're a good fit and would get along well at the event. So do mention things like your community involvement. If you're leading a ProtoSchool chapter and you apply to camp, do include that when you apply. I'm not directly involved in planning this, but does anyone have questions I can try to help with if I do know the answers? There are scholarships available, by the way, and that process for applying for a scholarship is built into the normal application form. Okay. So, just pop back over to our notes. On the content development front, which is where we'll start. Actually, let me just pull up really quickly our roadmap for you, just so you can see where I'm getting these topics from. So the ProtoSchool roadmap was published in late March or early April, I think, and it has a sense of our guiding principles and also these top level goals that we're going to talk through. And as you see OKRs come out for each quarter, you'll see that they're aligned with these goals. So one is content development, making sure that we're creating an increasing range of tutorial content from across multiple projects. At the moment, that will stay heavily Ipfs until we have a good body of work there. But growing the work that we have, and one of the things we acknowledge is that it's hard for local chapter leaders right now because they're running out of content quite quickly. So it's challenging to do their chapter events in the way that we intend. So that's a real top priority in this quarter. And then learner experience, you can also think of as UX within the ProtoSchool tutorials. So making improvements to the website structure and giving people the things they need to have a positive experience online, to track their progress as they go along. All of that UX stuff we can do to make the platform better. And then community growth is all about making sure that chapter leaders have what they need to succeed, that we're both gaining new chapters and making the experience better for chapter leaders and the members of those chapters. And then project management is really just structural stuff to position the project for growth. So kind of odds and ends, organizational stuff for the most part. So if you review more detailed stuff that's in our roadmap, you'll see it kind of broken out into those sections. And that's why we're gonna give a shot at structuring our meeting in that same way moving forward, and we can always change the plan if we don't like the flow of this. But on the content development front today, I personally have been spending time with help from Diogo on building out a tutorial on the mutable file system, which is the next kind of top priority for our content. I had been stalled out for a bit, but I'm feeling like I'm in a much better place now. So we have lessons on the write command and ls, and kind of moving on from there. And Diogo, as we'll see in a minute, has built a bunch of functionality that's really going to help me make those lessons as effective as they can be. So that one's coming soon. I'm about to pull it out into a new PR. And then learner experience, let me hand over to you, Diogo. If there's anything you want to show us, feel free to pull up a screen share.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so want me to show the logging stuff and the error validation? Yeah. I'm just gonna share my screen. So a bunch of work that I did when I started working on ProtoSchool a few weeks ago is I restructured the project a bit to componentize some of the stuff in ProtoSchool to help chapter leaders and people who want to build new tutorials. Now it's easier to submit a new tutorial. You had to do some code and you have to add a lot of HTML to a lot of files. Now you almost just have to put everything in a JSON file and everything will magically appears. But we were working on a README, and the main README of ProtoSchool, and everything is written down there. Another thing that I've been working on is, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, we can. And this is a sneak preview of the mutable file system lesson that Diogo's using to show you the new functionality.
Yeah, I have to use this because there's no lessons that are using these functionalities. So basically, when you have an external error, you couldn't catch that error and translate it to something meaningful to the users. So if IPFS, for example, had any error, that error, it would be outputted here, for example. Yeah, it's not going to happen because I already have the working code. So I'm sorry because I was working on some branch. Maybe I did probably did something that's not making this work. Something is like, I really want to show this, but live coding, this is what happened. I'm just going to try one more time. If this doesn't work, I'll just show the pull request that has pictures in it.
I can also try it from mine if you need me to.
Let's see. Yeah, okay. So as you can see, this is not the right answer, but now we have a meaningful message saying we have a small tip that guides the user of what's missing in the solution. Previously, this is an error that comes from IPFS. Previously, this wasn't the text that you would see. You would just see an error that it's a bit cryptic for users who aren't used to IPFS. So now we can catch errors and override them and just show users the message that we want. So that's pretty cool for new tutorials that will come up. Another thing is on some lessons right now on the ProtoSchool, there are no lessons with it, but the lessons of MFS that Terry is working on, sometimes she wanted you to see, for example, the files that are on the IPFS repo. The way to do that, basically you had to open the DevTools and we were logging some stuff and you would see the log stuff there. That's not very user friendly because the user has to open their DevTools. Maybe there's some users that don't even know what DevTools are or how to open them. So right now we're putting that directly on the UI. Yeah, so when you pass, you don't need to pass a lesson, but when the tutorial author wants to show something, now you just pass another prop to the lesson that will be written. This is a work in progress, but that will be written in the README crew. You just pass another option and you can have an additional step showing what you want. You can override this too, the description, or this is optional, it can appear. But then you can see, you can log whatever you want, or you can show something that you think it's meaningful for the user. So that's another feature that we added. This one, it's not merged yet, but it will be soon. And yeah, there are some improvements to the
Yeah, this is really cool. And I was happy to see that the way Diogo implemented it, it doesn't have to log exactly the same things that you would be logging to the console. You can control whether it's the results of an LS in your IPFS or something else in the code. So if there were some kind of error going on behind the scenes that was getting console logged, and you had in the current system, you'd have the user open the console log to see the thing you want them to see, and they might see something else going weirdly also. This is a really cool improvement from my perspective. And it's something that there's at least one existing lesson that we should go back and fix. I think it might be in the blog series, where we're asking people to like look at a site CID before and after something. So we should see if it's possible to apply this there, but it's gonna be really cool. Both of these features are gonna be really awesome.
Yeah, and this way we have a lot more control of what we want the user to see. As you said, sometimes you'll open console log and nobody's perfect, so there will be a bunch of errors, and we want to make things pretty good. So this is pretty good. So that's it on my end. You guys have any questions?
This is great. One thing that I'm a little worried about, so each time that you try to execute the code to see if it works, you have to spin up and wait for the onReady for a new IPFS instance, right? Is that going to get kind of slow sometimes, or like have we seen any issues where like that's just happening too fast for us to really keep up?
I'm not sure. On my end, it hasn't been super slow, but yes, sometimes there's a few seconds of delay. So maybe we'll just have to put a little spinner, because right now I don't think there's any indication that work is being done. So just
are you asking if that thing runs extra times because of this feature? It's still it's still just in the same validate function. So it's still only like on one click of the submit button, it's still creating one new IPFS instance and then printing.
No. So I saw it like checking it as you were typing, right?
No, it's just the logging stuff.
Oh, okay. I think I misinterpreted what it was doing, because it said that you hit a success condition before you had actually submitted it. So
no. After I submit, it would show the success,
Oh,
and it
okay.
finished the logging. Yeah, yeah.
I
No,
guess
it,
you were just doing it so fast that it looked like it was as you type.
yeah.
Okay. I was really
Bro,
excited for a second that we were just doing it as you type, and I was like, oh, sweet. But apparently
if
Oh,
if we
not.
now have that feature, it was an accident. I'm not saying it didn't happen,
Okay.
yeah.
but if so, it's some problem with like the setting of the lesson being passed or something.
Okay.
And then we do have that new
Mm-hmm.
section that shows the results. If you hit reset code, that will disappear. It will clear out the little like log
Right.
property that you've added to output.test so that
Mhm.
section won't show if you go back and type something different.
We could also just, as you type, potentially check if it's valid JavaScript, because like while you're typing, you're often in a state where it's not even valid yet, like the syntax is off. So we could sort of like either gray out the button or do something that showed that like, oh, you need to make a change before you can actually submit this, so that we don't like have people submitting code that like actually just doesn't work at all. Right.
But I
Yeah,
think
although we want the syntax errors to show. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It could like show this. It could show the syntax error like if you hit submit or if you waited for a little while or something. You don't want it to say it like constantly as you type, because like as you're typing there will be invalid syntax, right? Actually, wait. So we're embedding the Visual Studio Code editor. There's definitely hooks in there to like do things in the line and to change the syntax if things are not working. So we could potentially just like pull a plugin or something and maybe have that work as you type. I don't know. We should look into that. And I'll log an issue to look into it.
Yeah, this stuff is all really cool. Diogo, thank you for all your work on it.
Yeah.
And then as Diogo makes all of these changes, he's also updating the instructions for people who are building tutorials. So those are improving as you go. That's in the README of the protoschool.github.io repo. And the other feature you saw there in passing was that file upload box, which is something that Michael built, and it ended up getting, that one got merged now, right? The file upload exists. Finally is available to authors because we separated out from the work that's going on to build the MFS tutorial. So thanks to Michael for getting that ball rolling on that as well. Okay, anything else anyone has on learner experience? Okay. So community growth, it's possible I already mentioned this last week. I've lost track of time. There are new chapters in Hangzhou, which I'm sure I'm mispronouncing, and Taipei, which is awesome. And we have a request in from Nairobi, Kenya. So I'm working on setting up a chapter there. Any exciting updates from the Denver chapter that you wanted to share, Dan?
I'd say that now I'm seeing ProtoSchool getting some more robust tutorials built. I'm getting excited to host another couple of meetups around it.
Yeah,
So,
that's really a limiting
way to go,
factor right
guys.
now, which is why
Yeah.
we're trying to focus so hard on that at the moment.
Yeah.
I also saw just recently a listing for what I think is the first meeting of the Seattle chapter, and they're going to work through all of the existing tutorials in that. So that's posted. I think I just retweeted it on Twitter if anyone's in that area and wants to check that out. On the project management front, the improvements that we're making as we go for tutorial authors, making the process, I consider that kind of a key piece of structuring for future growth, because the easier we make it to build a tutorial, the bigger a community we can have supporting that. That's it for kind of walking through based on our top level goals. Does anyone have other ProtoSchool updates they wanted to share?
I just had a quick question. What do we think the timeline is for the file upload one to be merged entirely? I know that the component was merged, but like the actual tutorial.
It's a great question. I appear to be very bad at predicting how long things take and how much time I have to work on them. I think the problem right now is not things taking a long time. It's just me working on offline camp and other stuff like that mixed in. So I definitely feel much more unblocked. So I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks, but I don't want to specifically promise that. Like that long to having, I think, a first draft and then making sure I have some good feedback. And Diogo's been really helpful with helping out with like validation and catching. He's caught things in old lessons that I've gone for months thinking the validation was right. And I'm like, and he'll alert me that it's always catching on the wrong conditional. I'll be like, no, it's always catching on the right one. I'm like, oh no, I've just been answering the question wrong for months. Never mind. So it's definitely helpful having more eyes on things. But we're moving along. I feel very unblocked on that now that we have more of a clear focus and the ability, like once, hopefully within, today or tomorrow, I hope we'll get merged that functionality to let you see things in the UI itself, which will be a really big help for just giving some immediate feedback for, the change that you made in MFS. Now your directory looks like this. It's going to be particularly useful there. And then we'll just see as we go. Like, I don't think I've gotten far enough to see how that would print if I do have like nested subdirectories and stuff in them. So it may be that it'll be super clear just from that, and all I'll need to do is an LS to print. Or it may be that I have to have people like dig down and do the exercise by like looking in their subfolder and printing that. So it's just that kind of stuff. I'm in the process of learning the MFS commands as I go. But I'm also open to help if more people want to throw their hands in on the content of that one. I'm open to that too. Do you have something? Are you just curious, or is there something you're about to work on that I'm blocking?
No. I was mainly curious, and because like I think that when it's ready, we should message it to the other chapters that have already, especially the ones that have run already, so that they know that there's new content. And I was just wondering like what the kind of timeline is for us to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And like I know that it was blocked for quite a while, and that like we keep finding like new improvements that we want to make to ProtoSchool for that tutorial. So I'm just wondering, I was kind of wondering like where we are in that cycle, and it seems like we're at the tail end of it, where like all of these improvements that we wanted to make are now like in, and it's just about like getting
and I'm sure we'll keep thinking of things as we go, but the fact that I have Diogo helping is really like it's a big improvement. And just the fact of kind of focusing in on MFS versus the other version is helpful. Although Hugo is working on an OKR that will unblock the ability to, I don't even remember what our problem is with the other version, not being able to use
something about the blobs.
It's a format blobs. Yeah, not being able to use blobs when it's not MFS or something like that. So that one will get unblocked soon, but I feel like I have a more clear focus now. So both that and getting more comfortable with the validation, all that stuff is making things move faster.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this tutorial is just going to be MFS, right? And then I think by Ipfs Camp, we want to have another one for the other file commands, but that's a separate tutorial, right?
So I do think we still want to build a separate tutorial on to do with files what we've taught people to do with DAG, for example. But yes, it would be a separate tutorial.
Okay, cool.
It was just the thing that we had some disagreement on was the order in which to present those two things. So now we're building MFS as though it's the easier one. The other suggestion I should mention that came up recently in a conversation Michael and I were having with one of our Seattle chapter leaders, who's been giving us some awesome UX feedback recently, is that the thing we're currently having there is like the most beginner content, the one that has no code at all, that walks through like location addressing versus content addressing and all of those concepts. It gets much harder and much less clear why it's in there when we get to the part about like Merkle DAGs. So we're now thinking of, this isn't like a top urgent priority, but splitting that out. So the stuff that's more like content and location addressing stays as its own thing, but probably has a different name on the tutorial. And then the stuff that's more Merkle DAG gets put into a new thing or put into the beginning of one of the other DAG related lessons. And then we should think, Michael, about whether
I mean, I think that like you probably want it to be its own little page or lesson or something, because you want people to read it before the DAG tutorials, but
Mhm.
also before this new tutorial that's going to be about the underlying file APIs, like not MFS,
Okay.
because it's
Okay.
you want to know that for that too. Like if you're explaining like how the files actually get turned into data structures, then you need to understand the Merkle DAG stuff. But
And
you
I
definitely
do-
don't. But you don't need that for MFS, right? Like the point of MFS, is
Right.
you don't need to
Yeah.
be concerned with that.
And I think
Okay.
I'll probably try to lean on you a little bit again, Michael, when we get to splitting those out and trying to make it super clear why people should care about this. I found, so in that same trail, I don't think you've responded to it yet, but I added a note because I saw a talk by Tara Vansel that gave me like one extra clue about that might have been important. You can tell me whether it was or not. So that's something we can think about how we want to structure. The other thing I was going to say that we should think about is we had some debate when I joined about whether those DAG lessons should be labeled as IPFS or IPLD. I don't know if that's something that we should be reassessing or not. But
so they should remain IPFS as long as they use the IPFS DAG API.
Okay.
Like we have a different set of APIs in IPLD for creating
Gotcha.
structures now.
Okay. Gotcha.
And like eventually some of that will get merged into IPFS, and potentially like there is a background discussion about like, do we need the DAG API in IPFS? And if that happens, then we would definitely just like change the lesson to use the IPLD APIs, and then it would be an IPLD lesson.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll leave them as IPFS for now. And Diogo, as part of his restructuring, did something that will make it easier as we do add content from new projects to just, pull in the little, pick the IPFS logo, pick the IPLD logo, those kinds of things. So, cool. Anything else?
Yeah, just one quick note on the Tara Vansel thing. So like, the content-enriched data structures have like a lot of differences and advantages, and it's always a struggle to figure out like which parts of it are necessary to teach people in order to understand the value of like the next thing that we're teaching. And like teasing that apart is just going to be a little bit difficult. So yeah, like I mean, obviously what Tara said is true. I think the question really is like, is that important information for understanding the value of a particular API or lesson? And like why that is interesting, and that's the thing that I don't have a clear answer on.
Yep. And one thing we can do is at the beginning of a new tutorial, a new intermediate or advanced tutorial, we can say, as we learned in X introductory thing, blank is true, where we left off with blank not getting super details about why we care maybe, and in the context of why it matters because Z. Like we can add a little bit more context in the way that it flows into this specific, more advanced lesson, and kind of refresh on why we care about the stuff that we learned earlier. And we also have new ways to kind of we have some of the groundwork laid out to chunk things into courses now when we have enough that we want to do that. So
cool, very cool.
With specific orders. At the moment, it's just like what order they'll appear on this screen, but. Any other updates? Dan, did you have anything else you wanted to chat about, or?
I actually do want to ask, and forgive me if I haven't seen it yet, but one thing I think would be really cool now that we have this ability to upload files and to play with the MFS, would it be possible to also integrate some way that we can request pinning on some of the community servers that are out there, the gateways, such that some of this content that we're playing with, that we could potentially now be accessed outside of the tutorial? So, and giving the learner a sense of like what you're doing there, in the sense that like you're requesting somebody else to hold this data for you out on the network, and why don't you go to a different browser and see if that content exists,
Okay, so I might be lying. So Michael or Diogo, is it true that right now when you make this IPFS instance and put this stuff in it, that it's ending up, like when we go to IPLD Explorer, the fact that we're able to use that, does that mean that it's on the IPFS gateway?
So it's
at
on
least
the
briefly?
network. So there's two things going on, right? Like one is like, is the data available in the network? And two, like, have you asked somebody, had somebody else pin it so that it stays up when you're thinking about it anymore? like the thing about the IPLD Explorer is that works unless you were to close the tab for ProtoSchool that like had your data
Right.
in it.
So what I think would be really cool to see is like that we could show that on request, because there are the community pinning services that I know of, that somebody else will pin this for you and hold it, and you can look at it somewhere else, at least until it's garbage collected wherever, you know.
So we don't have a pinning service that isn't authenticated right now, because obviously, like you're paying to store things on behalf of somebody. So that I think would be the blocker there.
Okay.
We just
probably
don't
not.
have that. I think that like if we had a really easy to use pinning service, authenticated or not, we could potentially integrate it into IPLD Explorer or create a version of IPLD Explorer where you would literally like say, oh, hey, look at this IPLD Explorer. Oh, hey, also here's a button to pin it indefinitely in service X. And we could potentially even add several of the services, but I don't know, like that would be up to the IPLD Explorer team. I don't know what their timeline.
That makes sense. One thing though, I know that is confusing to people who are generally coming on is that it is only locally stored, and as well as that in browser, it's only in your cache. So that's going to get garbaged immediately. So people are confused. They're like, wait, I thought this was like a distributed file system. Like, why is it gone immediately?
And also because of the way that we do, we create like an ephemeral IPFS instance and then we kill it. So even if you pinned it in ProtoSchool, it wouldn't actually pin it. Like that whole instance is still getting blown away. So I think that like we should probably start a thread in ProtoSchool that is just like a lesson on pinning. And decide what that lesson would look like, right? Like it may just be text for now about like how pinning works and why that's important, and here's some services. And then at some point in the future, maybe we can do like a much better, more integrated tutorial.
Right. So pinning and also giving a sense to the user of that idea that it is local only unless somebody else picks this up, and talking through like what that is and potentially alluding to like, well, Filecoin is a way that you could pay people to do this for you, kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when we were at our planning meetings in Lisbon, Diogo and Ollie and I were doing a little bit of prep work for one of the top secret workshops at Ipfs Cam. And it is about like, neither Diogo nor I are responsible for building that specific content, and it may or may not end up, some part of it might end up in ProtoSchool and some might not, but they are planning content that is about this sort of like permanence, misperceptions of permanence, pinning. Like, is that an accurate description, Diogo, of what the topic of that thing was that we were talking about?
Yeah,
so
I think it is.
It's definitely related, and like pinning is certainly like a concept that in my mind needs to come fairly soon in our content. As far as I know, pinning is like between me being able to share a file and me being able to host a website. It's like somewhere in between that in the progression of things I would need to learn.
Right. Okay.
I mean, so at the very least, once that content is built, we'll have something to link to at the end of the tutorial, like at the very least, even if we don't have an interactive tutorial.
Yeah, even if it ends up somewhere other than ProtoSchool that it's hosted. And that's the thing that we're going to continue to run into. I don't always understand the depths of the technical intricacies of what we can do and can't do within ProtoSchool versus in other platforms, right? So like right now, things that require the command line, we're not doing in ProtoSchool. And we've made a decision not to focus on that right now. But one of the features that we have in mind to build out is, like Michael said, like a page at the end of a tutorial, at the end of every tutorial. It's like, here's other stuff that's related that you could learn in these other formats, or here are issues you could be helping with. Now that you have these skills, that kind of stuff, so that we have a way to link out to other resources, and doing a better job of looking at the current documentation about IPFS and pushing people into ProtoSchool for relevant content. All of that linking will also help when we do encounter a topic where ProtoSchool isn't the right place to teach it.
Yeah, it makes sense. So
whether
kind of like
pinning is something we can never do or not, I'm not the one to answer, but
yeah, I like that effectively at the end you have something that in my mind I might put the analogy of like a launching pad. Be like, well, you learn this stuff, now go out and prosper in the world with the tools you've learned. Here's some links.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So Michael, can you do me a favor? Because I started typing too late. Will you go into the notes and the discussion highlights and write more about this pending conversation where I started it and write more and more accurately, please? Thank you. I forgot to request a note taker. I'm only allowed to type 45 minutes out of every hour now. It's a very exciting limitation for a coder. So see how that goes. Anything else people wanted to chat about? All right, cool. Thanks everyone for coming. We ran a little over, but great discussion as always. And hopefully we'll see y'all next week. Thanks everybody.
Bye guys.
Bye.